Ethan had always been a curious and lively boy. At 10 years old, he had a mind full of questions and a heart full of excitement for the world. Every day at school brought something new, and he loved sharing every small detail with his mother, Laura, when he came home. But one particular day, Ethan walked through the front door with a strange look on his face. Laura noticed it immediately. His usual cheerful smile was missing, replaced by a mixture of confusion and disbelief. She put down her keys and knelt to greet him, asking gently, "How was your day?" Ethan hesitated, glancing around the living room as if he wanted to make sure they were alone. Then he blurted out something that made Laura pause. "Mom, I met someone at school today and he looks exactly like me." Laura chuckled softly, thinking her son was joking or playing one of his imaginative games. "Oh really, who looks like you, honey?" she asked, smiling. Ethan shook his head seriously. "No, Mom, I'm not joking. He's real. He has the same hair, same eyes, even the same little scar on his knee from when I fell off my bike last summer." Laura felt a chill run through her body. She knew Ethan was imaginative, but this time his voice carried a weight she had never heard before. She asked him to explain more. Ethan told her that a new boy had joined his class that day, and from the moment he saw him, he felt a strange connection. He described how the boy's laugh sounded just like his, how he sat the same way in class, and how even his handwriting seemed familiar. Laura listened carefully, trying to stay rational. It was possible that he had found someone who resembled him, but the way he spoke made her uneasy. Ethan's insistence was different this time. It wasn't just curiosity, it was certainty. That evening, Laura couldn't sleep. Ethan's words replayed in her mind over and over. She remembered every detail he had described, every small coincidence he had pointed out. Could it be possible, she wondered, that Ethan had a twin she had never known about? The thought seemed absurd. She had raised Ethan since birth and had no reason to believe he had a twin. But the way he spoke that day had shaken something deep inside her. The next morning, Laura decided she would see for herself. She dropped Ethan off at school but waited a few blocks away, hidden behind her car, to watch. Her heart pounded as she tried to prepare herself for what she might see. Minutes later, a boy walked into the school building and Laura froze. The boy looked identical to Ethan. Her chest tightened as she watched him. Every movement, every gesture, every smile mirrored her son. She felt as though she were seeing a reflection in real life, and her mind struggled to process what she was witnessing. Laura approached the teacher later that day, trying to stay calm despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. She asked casually about the new student, mentioning how he seemed familiar. The teacher confirmed that the boy had recently transferred from another city, and that his name was Noah. She added that some students had commented on the uncanny resemblance between the two boys. Laura felt a mix of relief and fear. Relief that the teacher noticed it too, and fear at the thought that this resemblance could mean something much deeper. That evening, she sat down with Ethan to ask more questions. Ethan said that Noah had shared a little about his life, telling him that he was adopted and didn't know much about his birth family. The boy seemed kind and friendly, but there was a sense of mystery surrounding him. Laura felt a chill. The coincidence seemed too strong to be ignored. She decided she needed to know more. The next day, she went to the school again and waited to meet Noah's adoptive parents during pickup. When they arrived, she introduced herself and spoke carefully, mentioning the resemblance between the boys. The parents were kind but seemed slightly uneasy. Laura sensed that they were hiding something, although she didn't yet know what. She left the meeting with a mixture of hope and apprehension. That night, Laura couldn't stop thinking about the situation. She remembered Ethan's detailed descriptions of Noah, the stories about his family, and how similar the boys were in almost every way. She began to research online, looking into adoption records and birth announcements from the hospital where Ethan was born. Most of the information seemed ordinary, but she felt a nagging urge to dig deeper. It was as if some truth was just beyond reach, waiting to be discovered. The following days were filled with quiet observation. Laura noticed the way Ethan talked about Noah with excitement, how he eagerly shared stories about their time together, and how he seemed happier than ever. There was also an unusual tension in the air, a sense of anticipation as if something important was about to be revealed. Laura decided to take a more proactive approach. She called the hospital where Ethan had been born, requesting to speak with someone who might remember details about that day. After several calls, a retired nurse agreed to meet with her. When Laura met the nurse, she was struck by how vivid the nurse's memories were. The nurse recalled a night when there had been a power outage, chaos in the maternity ward, and two newborn boys delivered almost at the same time. Some paperwork had been misplaced, the nurse explained, and one of the babies had been placed for adoption while the other stayed with his birth mother. Laura's heart raced as the nurse spoke. Could it be possible that Ethan had a twin who had been given away at birth? The nurse didn't have names or records, but the story matched Ethan's descriptions far too closely to be ignored. That night, Laura sat in the living room staring at photographs of Ethan as a baby. She thought about the possibility of another boy out there who looked exactly like her son. The idea was both terrifying and compelling. She realized that the journey ahead would be difficult, filled with uncertainty and challenges, but she knew she had to find the truth. Meanwhile, Ethan continued to speak about Noah with the same excitement and curiosity as before. He noticed small similarities in their habits, their laughter, and even the way they expressed themselves. Laura watched him, her heart full of conflicting emotions. Joy for the bond her son had found and anxiety over the mysteries that remained unsolved. Over the next few days, Laura carefully observed both boys at school. She noticed how classmates often confused them, how teachers sometimes mixed up their names, and how naturally the boys seemed to mirror each other. Every detail strengthened her belief that this resemblance was not mere coincidence. Laura decided she would keep a detailed record, noting the boys' habits, gestures, and speech patterns. She began to gather every piece of information she could, hoping that one day, the truth would reveal itself. One afternoon, as she watched the boys from a distance, she felt a surge of hope. Despite the uncertainty and the questions that remained unanswered, she knew that the connection between Ethan and Noah was real. It was as if fate itself had drawn them together, and she was determined to follow that path wherever it might lead. Laura spent that evening reflecting on the events that had unfolded so far. She realized that her life and Ethan's life was about to change in ways she could not yet imagine. The mystery of the twin, the adoption, and the hidden truth was just beginning to unfold, and she understood that every step forward would require courage, patience, and unwavering determination. As she prepared for bed, Laura looked at Ethan, who was quietly reading a book in his room. She gently kissed his forehead and whispered a promise to him, that she would uncover the truth no matter what it took. Ethan smiled, unaware of the depth of the journey that lay ahead, but full of hope that somehow everything would make sense. That night, Laura could not sleep. Thoughts of two identical boys, the lost paperwork, and the possibility of a hidden twin swirled in her mind. She felt a mixture of fear, excitement, and anticipation. Somewhere out there, a boy lived who mirrored her son in every way, and she was determined to find him. The story of Ethan and his mysterious twin had begun, and Laura knew that the days ahead would be filled with discoveries that would change their lives forever. The next morning, Laura woke up early with a sense of determination. She couldn't stop thinking about Ethan's description of Noah and the overwhelming resemblance between the two boys. She decided to visit the school again, hoping to speak more with the teacher and perhaps see the boys interact in class. When she arrived, the school seemed quiet, children rushing to their classrooms, laughter echoing through the halls. She approached the office and politely asked the teacher if she could observe the class for a short while. The teacher, noticing the concern in Laura's eyes, agreed and asked her to sit quietly at the back. Ethan and Noah were already seated when Laura entered. She couldn't help but notice how synchronized they seemed. They raised their hands at the same time, giggled in the same way, and even frowned in the same manner when something confused them. It was uncanny. Laura's heart raced. Every gesture, every movement mirrored each other perfectly, reinforcing the idea that this was more than a coincidence. She felt a mix of wonder and anxiety. After the class ended, Laura approached Noah's adoptive parents, who had come to pick him up. They seemed kind but slightly uncomfortable, as if they sensed Laura's intentions without knowing exactly what she was thinking. Laura introduced herself again and gently mentioned the resemblance between the boys, hoping to start a conversation that could lead to clarity. The adoptive mother smiled politely but seemed hesitant, mentioning that Noah was happy and adjusting well to his new school, and she hoped he would make friends and settle in comfortably. Laura didn't press further that day. She realized that pushing too hard might make the parents defensive or uneasy. Instead, she focused on observing the boys' interactions. During recess, Ethan and Noah ran across the playground, laughing in the same tone, calling each other by nicknames that felt familiar. They shared snacks, swapped small toys, and even copied each other's expressions in a way that made other children giggle. Laura noticed that the other students often confused the two, thinking they were playing a game of impersonation. But Laura knew better. She felt certain that the connection was real, and it was something deep and undeniable. When they returned home, Laura decided to sit down with Ethan. She asked him more about his conversations with Noah, trying to gather any details that could provide insight into his past or family. Ethan mentioned that Noah sometimes spoke about his adoption but never shared specifics. He knew he was adopted and sometimes he wondered about his birth parents, but he had accepted his life with his adoptive family. Ethan listened with interest and empathy, asking questions about Noah's experiences, and he seemed genuinely invested in understanding his friend. Laura saw the curiosity and compassion in her son, and it warmed her heart. She also felt a deeper sense of responsibility to uncover the truth. Over the next few days, Laura continued her quiet investigation. She started by calling the hospital where Ethan had been born, trying to find anyone who might remember the circumstances around his birth. After several calls, she was connected to a retired nurse who had worked at the hospital for decades. The nurse agreed to meet Laura at a local cafe, and when they sat down, the nurse's memory was sharp and detailed. She recalled a night when there had been a storm that caused a power outage in the maternity ward. The chaos had led to some mix-ups with paperwork, and 2 newborn boys had been delivered almost at the same time. One baby had remained with his birth mother, while the other had been placed for adoption. The nurse admitted that she did not remember the names of the babies or the families involved, but she confirmed that there had been unusual circumstances surrounding those births. Laura felt her pulse quicken. Everything was starting to fit together. The nurse's story explained the uncanny resemblance between Ethan and Noah, and it suggested that there had been a twin separated at birth. The nurse warned Laura that records might be difficult to find due to the missing paperwork, but she encouraged Laura to follow any leads she could find. Laura left the meeting feeling a mix of hope and anxiety. She knew that uncovering the full truth would take time and patience, but she was determined to see it through. Back at home, Laura discussed the meeting with Ethan without revealing too much about the possibility of a separated twin. She wanted to keep the conversation simple and age-appropriate, focusing on encouraging Ethan's curiosity and empathy. Ethan continued to talk about Noah, sharing stories of their games and school experiences. Laura listened attentively, taking mental notes of their similarities, habits, and shared quirks. She realized that even if there were obstacles ahead, the bond between the boys was real and undeniable. One evening, Laura decided to take a cautious step further. She contacted Noah's adoptive parents again, requesting a meeting at their home. She approached the situation gently, explaining that she was curious about the boys' uncanny resemblance and wanted to understand their connection. The adoptive parents were hesitant at first but agreed to meet after Laura reassured them that her intentions were solely to learn more and ensure the boys' well-being. During the meeting, Laura noticed subtle signs of unease. The parents seemed protective of Noah, understandably so, but they also seemed slightly wary of Laura's persistence. She chose her words carefully, emphasizing her concern for the boys and the importance of understanding any potential family connections. She avoided accusations or pressure, instead fostering an atmosphere of trust and cooperation. By the end of the meeting, the parents agreed to consider her request for more information, showing a willingness to work together for the boys' benefit. The days that followed were filled with quiet observation and reflection. Laura continued to watch the boys interact, noting every detail of their behaviors and reactions. She observed how they mirrored each other's movements, how they laughed in similar ways, and how even their expressions seemed synchronized. Other parents at the school noticed the resemblance and began commenting, some jokingly suggesting they were twins, while others expressed amazement at the similarities. Laura kept careful notes of these observations, building a detailed picture of the connection that was becoming increasingly impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, Ethan continued to express excitement about Noah, sharing stories of their shared interests and games. Laura encouraged these interactions, seeing them as opportunities for the boys to strengthen their bond. She also recognized the importance of approaching the situation carefully, ensuring that any actions taken were in the best interest of both children. She avoided sharing her suspicions too openly, knowing that revealing too much too soon could create confusion or fear. Laura also began researching adoption agencies and birth records, hoping to uncover information that could lead to Noah's birth family. She discovered that private adoption records could be difficult to access, especially from decades ago, but she remained undeterred. She reached out to contacts, asked questions, and followed every lead she could find. Each piece of information added to her growing understanding, and each small discovery reinforced her belief that there was a twin connection waiting to be uncovered. One afternoon, as she observed the boys during art class, Laura noticed how naturally they worked together. They shared materials, exchanged ideas, and even corrected each other's mistakes in a way that felt instinctive. Their teacher commented on how well they collaborated, noting that their ability to understand each other seemed beyond typical friendship. Laura's heart swelled with emotion. She knew that whatever the future held, the bond between Ethan and Noah was real and strong. As the investigation continued quietly in the background, Laura made a plan. She would gather all the information she could, observe the boys closely, and prepare for the moment when the truth could be revealed safely and thoughtfully. She wanted to ensure that both boys felt secure and supported regardless of the outcome. Every step she took was guided by love, concern, and a deep sense of responsibility. Over the next few weeks, Laura and Ethan shared small moments that strengthened their connection as mother and son. They discussed friendships, school events, and their hopes for the future. Laura noticed that Ethan seemed more confident and joyful, perhaps buoyed by the presence of Noah in his life. She felt a sense of gratitude that, despite the uncertainties, her son had found a friend who brought him happiness and companionship. Laura also continued her quiet conversations with the nurse who had first shared the story of the twin births. The nurse offered what little guidance she could, encouraging Laura to be patient and methodical. Every detail mattered, and Laura meticulously documented everything. She knew that patience would be key in unraveling the mystery and ensuring that any revelations were handled with care. By the end of Part 2, Laura had created a careful balance between observation, research, and nurturing her son's happiness. The story of the two boys, their uncanny resemblance, and the possibility of a hidden twin continued to unfold. Laura understood that the path ahead would be challenging, filled with unknowns, but she was committed to uncovering the truth while protecting the boys' well-being. The bond between Ethan and Noah grew stronger each day, a quiet testament to the extraordinary connection that awaited discovery. Laura woke early, the memory of the nurse's story weighing heavily on her mind. She could not stop thinking about the possibility that Ethan had a twin somewhere, separated at birth. The thought both terrified and fascinated her. Over the next few days, she carefully planned her next steps. She wanted to find any proof that could confirm what she already suspected. She decided to return to the hospital where Ethan was born, hoping that someone there could provide more clarity. At the hospital, Laura met with the records department. She explained that she was searching for information about the night Ethan was born. The staff were initially hesitant, explaining that records from that time might be incomplete, but Laura persisted politely. Finally, a staff member offered to search for any available documents, telling her that while the paperwork was fragmented, anything could be worth examining. Laura felt a flicker of hope. She spent hours going through stacks of old records, carefully noting birth times, ward logs, and nurse notes. Slowly, a picture began to emerge. There were indeed two boys born almost simultaneously, under circumstances that had caused confusion and lost paperwork. One baby had remained with his mother, and the other had been placed for adoption. Laura's heart pounded. She had found evidence that supported the story the nurse had told her. The possibility that Ethan and Noah were twins became more real with every page she read. Laura realized she needed more concrete evidence. She contacted a lawyer who specialized in adoption cases, explaining the situation and seeking advice on how to proceed without causing disruption or harm. The lawyer suggested a DNA test as the most direct and reliable method to determine any biological connection. Laura knew this would require careful handling, especially since Noah was adopted and his parents would need to consent. She planned to approach the subject delicately. In the meantime, Laura observed Ethan and Noah at school and during after-school activities. The boys' similarities were remarkable. They had the same laughter, the same expressions, and even the same gestures when excited or nervous. Other children continued to notice the resemblance, often joking about them being twins. Laura could see how much the boys enjoyed each other's company. They seemed to understand each other in ways that were almost instinctive, finishing each other's sentences and playing games that required perfect coordination. Laura met Noah's adoptive parents at a local cafe one afternoon. She explained her observations and concerns with careful, gentle language. The parents were initially skeptical but agreed to hear her out. Laura presented her findings about the birth circumstances and the nurse's testimony, emphasizing that her goal was to uncover the truth for the sake of both boys. She avoided speculation, focusing instead on facts and documented details. After some discussion, the parents agreed to consider a DNA test, understanding that the results could provide clarity and potentially strengthen the bond between the boys. Over the next week, arrangements were made for the DNA test. Laura coordinated with the school, the adoptive parents, and a local laboratory to ensure everything was handled professionally. The boys were unaware of the deeper implications. They only knew they were participating in a fun science activity. Ethan was excited and curious, and Noah approached it with cautious interest. Laura watched them closely, noting their similarities and the ease with which they interacted. The atmosphere was filled with anticipation and subtle tension, a mixture of excitement and nervousness that Laura could feel in her own chest. When the day of the test arrived, the boys sat side by side in the laboratory. The staff explained the process simply, allowing the boys to remain comfortable. Swabs were taken from each of them, and Laura and the adoptive parents observed respectfully. She felt a strange mix of fear and hope, knowing that the results could change everything. As the boys chatted and laughed together, Laura thought about how far they had come, from a simple observation to a potentially life-altering discovery. While waiting for the results, Laura continued her investigation. She revisited the nurse who had first shared the story about the twin births, asking for any additional recollections that might help contextualize the information. The nurse provided more details about the hospital staff that night, the confusion caused by the power outage, and the unusual handling of paperwork. Every piece of information added depth to Laura's understanding and strengthened her resolve to uncover the truth. She realized that this journey was not just about finding answers, but also about ensuring justice and clarity for the boys' lives. Meanwhile, the boys' bond continued to grow. They shared lunches, swapped stories, and even began to mimic each other's handwriting as a playful game. Their teacher remarked on their similarity, noting that they seemed to have an intuitive understanding of each other. Laura watched these interactions, feeling a mixture of pride and anxiety. She knew that whatever the results of the DNA test, the relationship they had built was genuine and meaningful. The boys had formed a connection that transcended coincidence, and she wanted to protect it. Finally, the day arrived when the DNA results came back. Laura held the envelope with trembling hands, unsure if she was ready for the truth. She called Noah's adoptive parents, arranging a meeting to review the results together. When they gathered in the living room, Laura carefully opened the envelope and read the findings aloud. The results confirmed what she had suspected all along. Ethan and Noah were biological twins. The room fell silent. Emotion surged, relief, shock, and a deep sense of awe. The adoptive parents were stunned, expressing disbelief but also gratitude for the clarity. Laura felt tears welling up in her eyes. She looked at Ethan and Noah, who were sitting side by side, laughing and unaware of the magnitude of the revelation. The reality of their twin connection was now undeniable, and the implications were profound. Laura and the adoptive parents discussed the next steps carefully. They agreed that the boys' well-being was paramount, and that they would approach the situation gradually. They decided to spend more time together, fostering the bond and allowing the boys to understand their connection naturally. Laura also began to plan how to explain the circumstances to Ethan in a way that was age-appropriate yet truthful. She wanted to ensure that he understood the significance without feeling overwhelmed or confused. Over the following weeks, the two families spent more time together. They arranged joint playdates, shared meals, and participated in school events. The boys' relationship blossomed, their similarities bringing them closer with each passing day. They laughed at the coincidences in their habits and shared experiences, marveling at how much they had in common. Laura watched them with a mix of joy and awe, recognizing the extraordinary journey that had brought them together. During this period, Laura continued her research into the adoption agency involved in Noah's placement. She discovered that the agency had handled multiple adoptions under questionable circumstances, sometimes separating siblings for convenience or profit. The realization was unsettling, but Laura focused on using the information responsibly, aiming to prevent similar situations in the future. She shared her findings with the lawyer, who advised her on the best way to proceed to protect the boys and ensure legal clarity. As the bond between Ethan and Noah strengthened, Laura reflected on the journey so far. From Ethan's initial observation to the confirmation of their twin connection, every step had been filled with emotion, discovery, and learning. She realized that this story was about more than uncovering a secret. It was about the resilience of family, the power of curiosity, and the extraordinary connections that can exist even under the most challenging circumstances. By the end of Part 3, Laura felt a sense of cautious optimism. The truth had been revealed and the boys' relationship was flourishing. She understood that challenges remained, particularly regarding legal and emotional adjustments, but she was confident that with love, patience, and understanding, they could navigate the future together. The story of Ethan and Noah, once a mystery shrouded in uncertainty, was now becoming a journey of discovery, connection, and hope. Each day brought new insights, and Laura was committed to guiding the boys through this remarkable chapter of their lives with care and compassion. Laura woke up with a mix of excitement and nervousness. The DNA results had confirmed that Ethan and Noah were twins, and now she faced the challenge of navigating this new reality with care. She knew that the next steps needed to be thoughtful and gradual. Both boys were still young, and she wanted them to understand their connection without fear or confusion. She also wanted to ensure that Noah's adoptive parents felt included and respected in every decision. The morning routine became a shared effort between the two families. Ethan and Noah walked to school together, laughing and chatting as if they had always been inseparable. Their classmates noticed how closely they resembled each other, and whispers of twins spread through the school. The boys found this amusing, sometimes pretending to swap places for fun, making the other children laugh. Laura watched from a distance, a warm smile on her face, feeling a mixture of relief and joy. The bond between them was natural and undeniable. At home, Laura spent time explaining the situation to Ethan in simple words, without overwhelming him. She told him that sometimes families have surprises and secrets, but what mattered most was love and connection. Ethan listened carefully, asking questions that were thoughtful and innocent. He wanted to know how Noah ended up with another family and why they hadn't known about each other sooner. Laura answered honestly but gently, ensuring that Ethan felt safe and reassured. The next challenge was integrating Noah's family more closely into their lives. Laura and Noah's adoptive parents arranged meetings where both families could spend time together. At first, there was some awkwardness. The parents were cautious, unsure how to navigate this new bond between the boys. Laura made sure to communicate openly, emphasizing cooperation, mutual respect, and the best interests of both children. Gradually, the interactions became more comfortable. Shared meals, trips to the park, and simple everyday activities created opportunities for connection and trust to grow. School life also evolved. Teachers noticed that the boys had a unique understanding of each other, almost like they could communicate without words. This sometimes caused confusion, but also became a source of fascination and amusement for their classmates. Laura and Noah's adoptive parents encouraged the boys to embrace their connection while making sure they each maintained their individuality. They emphasized that being twins didn't mean they had to be identical in everything. They could have their own interests, strengths, and personalities. Meanwhile, Laura continued her research into the adoption agency responsible for Noah's placement. She discovered that the agency had a history of questionable practices, including separating siblings and falsifying records. This revelation disturbed her, but she remained focused on using the information responsibly. She consulted with a lawyer to understand her options for ensuring that such mistakes would not harm other children in the future. Legal considerations aside, Laura concentrated on the boys' emotional well-being, knowing that the discovery of their twin connection could bring both joy and confusion. As the weeks passed, the boys grew closer. They played games together, shared secrets, and laughed over small coincidences that amazed everyone around them. Ethan noticed how Noah would instinctively mimic his gestures or expressions, and Noah began to recognize patterns in Ethan's habits that mirrored his own. This mutual recognition created a deep sense of belonging. The boys were discovering not only a sibling bond but also a reflection of themselves in another person. Laura and Noah's adoptive parents worked together to establish routines that allowed the boys to spend quality time together while also respecting their separate homes. Weekends were often spent visiting each other, sharing activities like biking, building model kits, or playing board games. The boys' laughter filled the air, creating memories that were both ordinary and extraordinary. Laura watched them closely, noticing how seamlessly the boys interacted and how much happiness this connection brought to their lives. The journey was not without challenges. Questions about the past occasionally arose, and both families had to navigate moments of confusion or emotional sensitivity. Laura made sure to create a supportive environment where the boys could ask questions and express their feelings freely. Honest communication became a cornerstone of their new family dynamic. Laura also encouraged Ethan and Noah to talk about their emotions, helping them understand that it was okay to feel a mix of excitement, curiosity, and uncertainty. School events and community activities became opportunities for the boys to showcase their bond. They participated in art projects, sports, and performances, often drawing attention because of their similarities. Laura felt a sense of pride as she watched them grow, knowing that the challenges they had faced were helping to strengthen their resilience and character. Their story began to inspire others, showing how family connections could transcend unexpected circumstances. One afternoon, Laura decided to have a heart-to-heart conversation with Ethan. They sat in the living room, sunlight streaming through the windows, and she asked him how he felt about having a twin. Ethan's eyes sparkled with excitement. He said he loved spending time with Noah and felt a special connection he couldn't explain. He asked if they could always be together, and Laura reassured him that they would continue building their bond, with both families supporting them. It was a moment of understanding and trust, a step forward in navigating this new chapter of their lives. Laura also made sure to include Noah in similar conversations. She wanted both boys to feel equally valued and understood. Noah expressed curiosity about his birth family, asking gentle questions about what had led to his adoption. Laura and his parents answered honestly, focusing on the importance of love, care, and family in its many forms. They reassured him that his adoptive parents loved him deeply, while also acknowledging the unique connection he now shared with Ethan. This careful balance helped the boys feel secure and supported, laying the foundation for a strong, healthy relationship. As the story unfolded, Laura noticed subtle ways in which the boys influenced each other. Ethan became more patient and understanding, while Noah showed more confidence and openness. Their personalities, while distinct, complemented each other in ways that brought out the best in both. Laura realized that discovering the truth about their twin connection was not just about biology. It was about emotional growth, empathy, and shared experiences that shaped who they were becoming. During this period, Laura also worked on building a network of support for both families. She connected with counselors and child development specialists to ensure that Ethan and Noah had access to guidance and resources as they navigated this extraordinary situation. She emphasized the importance of nurturing emotional intelligence, communication skills, and resilience. The families worked together, sharing insights, strategies, and encouragement to provide the boys with a stable, loving environment. The story of Ethan and Noah began to ripple through the community. Friends, neighbors, and school staff marveled at their similarities and the strength of their bond. Some were curious, others inspired, and many admired the careful, loving approach both families took to nurture the boys' relationship. Laura felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing that their journey could serve as an example of compassion, patience, and the power of truth. By the end of Part 4, Laura, Ethan, Noah, and their families had built a foundation of trust, understanding, and love. The boys' connection had grown stronger, and their lives were enriched by the discovery of their twin bond. Challenges remained, particularly regarding past circumstances and ongoing adjustments, but the families were prepared to face them together. The story of the two boys, once shrouded in mystery, had blossomed into a journey of joy, connection, and hope, with each day offering new experiences and opportunities to strengthen their extraordinary bond.